and greetings everyone. We are here for the pre-event webinar titled Poultry Industry Trends, Opportunities and Challenges. This webinar is conducted under the banner of Future Food, Livestock and Poultry Expo, scheduled on 19th and 20th of February 2025. I'm delighted to inform you that this event is taking place under the patronage of Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development, Kenya. My name is Jayashree Som, your host for the webinar today, and I'm privileged to welcome our esteemed panelists. Today, we have Nicolo Kineti, Secretary General, International Poultry Council, Maureen Stickle, Director, World Poultry Foundation, Praveen Kumar, Vice President, Poultry Federation of India, Dr. Abongil Balarane, CEO, South African Poultry Association, Teresia Nagang, Director, Jolly Footprints Limited. Without any further ado, let's dive into the discussion. I would like to first ask Nicolo how to foster a culture of sharing knowledge on training programs and regulations on food safety across different poultry sectors globally. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Thanks a lot. And as I said, thank you for having me. I think this webinar it's really important. Africa region will be one of the most growing region in the future. Consumption, production, and import of poultry meat is projected to grow tremendously in the coming 5 to 10 years, according to the OECD FAO agricultural outlook. So welcome all the initiatives that are aiming to increase the awareness about the poultry industry in Africa. So how to foster a culture of knowledge sharing? Well, that requires for sure a strategic and collaborative approach. There is a lot of knowledge out there in international organizations, government, private sector. There is a lot of knowledge. The problem is how to make that knowledge available. So first of all, I think it's important to explore all the opportunities that the sector in Africa has for public-private partnership, collaboration. I was recently in an FAO event where this topic was discussed. Opportunity for African company, for the Africa sector in the public partnership. I'm sorry, that's so complicated. The PPPs programs, both a global level. So that allows more a more broad circulation of best practices, good practices, guidelines, and I think this is the way to go. I think that opening and creating a broader network is the first step in fostering this culture.
Definitely. I mean, collaborations across borders, consistent update to regulations, and ongoing training will foster a culture of shared responsibility and continuous improvement in the food safety practices worldwide. Our viewers will also like to understand, Nicolo, in the face of international competition, how do organizations help local African poultry producers to increase efficiency, improve quality, and reduce cost?
Well, as I said, by opening to a broader international network that would allow a more in-depth circulation of best practices and knowledge. I think I like to look at failures more than success, because I think that what Africa needs to see is there are right path to take, because that is, of course, something that has to be designed on the region peculiarities and situation, but which path you should not take. And I think there are some wonderful examples out there on what should not be done. In terms of what should be done, there are many aspects in which the Africa sector could find help out there. There is one part on the infrastructure that involves mainly the government. I think that developing a cold storage and processing facilities system that would be really important together with the transportation network. What I think is also important is it's the training program, and I'm really glad to see Maureen here and the World Poultry Foundation. They're doing some amazing programs. They're running some amazing programs in Africa. I think it's very important, the training. It's equally important to train the trainers. So I think we should have a system in place on a regional level, which is designed on the region peculiarities that allows the sector to access information that are relevant for that region. There is a concerning situation globally on avian influenza, but as far as we know, as a let's say conventional industrial producer, Africa could play a big role in that. But we need to start addressing that problem in a scientific way. And as I said, including in the discussion all the international organization. So I think that, again, knowledge sharing, training, and infrastructure, it's probably my first answer. The second one is not really in our power to decide on. It's advancing the regulatory framework. I think for every kind of activity initiative, whether it's a scientific or entrepreneurial, the regulatory framework, it's the first step. And even on that, the private sector could support the government in providing them with information, what is going on. We have a wonderful experience right in Kenya with the Transform project that IPC is running, which has been chosen by Fortune as 2024 changing the world list item. So there is a lot of knowledge out there. It's important that the private sector take a real leadership and start pinging the government about creating the right framework and providing the infrastructure. And on the other hand, opening itself to inputs and knowledge from the outside.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nicolo. Rightly said, like with the right support, local African poultry producers can really enhance their competitiveness and contribute to both food security and economic development. Now, turning to our attention to our next contributor, Maureen Stickle. In the light of what has just been discussed, please tell us how can the government initiatives promote more sustainable and ethical practices in poultry farming and processing?
Thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me to join this webinar. It's a pleasure to be here and an honor to be a part of this panel discussion. So I think when we talk about sustainability, I think we often talk about it in terms of green practices, environmental practices, which are very important. And I'm not trying to not trying to miss the importance of that. But I think another aspect less talked about within sustainability, particularly within the African context, is sustainability in the sense that it needs to be able to live beyond a donor funder or a donor involvement in some sense. And so when I think about this question, I think where my mind really goes is that we need to have sustainability in terms of engagement with the private sector. So poultry won't grow and be successful without involved in profitable private sector poultry companies. I think even in rural areas, there's potential for large profits for companies. That's exactly a lot of what we do at the World Poultry Foundation. Our focus is on the rural farmer, less so on the commercial farmer in the urban area, or like the larger scale farmer that is already connected with the larger scale poultry company. We're really trying to create and develop poultry value chains that can reach beyond and into that rural area to impact rural households. I think any of that poultry activity, though, it will remain once-off or a development project. It'll be limited to just areas where there's tourism. It'll be dependent on trade restrictions unless there is this partnership with the private sector where they can really lead and drive it. I actually see Stuart Bradnick on the line with Silverlands, who is one of our partners we've worked with closely in terms of developing out this kind of value chain, targeting and geared towards that rural sector. I think, though, then getting back to the point around how can government support it, they can create the regulatory environment where those poultry companies can really flourish. they have the ability to approve the importation of vaccines and issue those licenses. They can, if you need to import different breeds that are better tailored to the local environment, they're who needs to approve that. So this overarching regulatory environment needs to be supportive of that kind of development of the poultry sector, and then also stable. I think there's a lot of countries where we've worked where all of a sudden there's a ban on something, and that causes everything to go a little bit into disarray. And so I think working to have a stable policy is also quite an important piece of it. And then I think, the other side that I think about in terms of government involvement then supporting sustainable ethical practices is on the field extension service. I think a lot of countries have these services, but often those extension agents are trying to cover a little bit of everything in the ag space. Their crops, their livestock within livestock, their cow, their ruminants, their poultry. And so I think more investment in terms of developing poultry specific certification veterinary service support would be so beneficial in terms of helping the poultry sector overall progress in each of the countries.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maureen, for your insights on how World Poultry Foundation and government initiatives are helping to enhance the poultry industry, the local poultry industry, specifically, if I say. So we would also like to understand your take on some of the most cost-effective and accessible biosecurity measures poultry farmers can adopt to prevent disease outbreak. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good question and so pertinent in light of really the HPA, high path avian influenza happening right now. And I'm going to say that I'm approaching this again from that rural small scale farmer household. I think, the large scale farmer, the large scale poultry producer, when we think of biosecurity, you can think of like vehicles, sprays. When you go in, there's like even like a vehicle well that you might drive through. There's footbaths at all the entrances, shower in, shower out of different facilities. So it can be very highly controlled. When you get into that rural setting, which is where we tend to focus and where we work, it's very open. Birds freely range, they roam around, all the flocks intermingle with each other. And I think it's much harder then to control what's happening. I think though there are a couple of like very simple measures that are not expensive that could be thought about. One of them is, and we see this all the time when we go to a rural household, we work with a dual purpose bird. People are very proud of their dual purpose birds and they want to show us them. They want to bring us to the house. They want to show us them, show how big they've gotten, how many eggs they've gotten. And I think the simplest way is actually to encourage a culture of like, protect your birds by not inviting everyone to come look at your birds. You're protecting them from getting sick. And so like some of that knowledge and awareness around not letting everyone into the poultry house. It should only be like a limited yourself. Maybe if you have a worker or a child who works with you or a family member, excuse me, that works with you, that might work better to help protect your birds. I think there's also pieces around simple like hand washing. All of our materials with rural farmers focus on like washing hands before and after, having a spare set of shoes. So if you do need to enter the house, you're changing your shoes, and those shoes are dedicated only for use in this poultry house. So there's some very simple ways I think that it can be limiting, or it can help limit the transmission of disease, even when you're at that very low scale production level.
Yeah, definitely. As far as I am understanding, like while some measures such as vaccinations or advanced ventilation systems
Sure.
may require
Sure.
some initial investments, but there are, as you said, there are plenty of affordable biosecurity protocols that can help prevent the spread of diseases. With this,
Yes, and maybe, so if I could add one point there, because I skipped over in my notes the vaccination point, big oversight. Obviously, vaccination is very important. I think though, then the challenge then to the vaccination companies is to really continue to develop strains of vaccines that are specific to the disease profiles within African countries.
yeah. Thank you for your insights, Maureen. Now, moving on to our next panelist, Dr. Abongil. Doctor, first, we would like to understand what are the opportunities in the poultry industry, specifically in South Africa?
No, thank you. I hope can you hear me clear on your side. Thanks for this opportunity. If you look into the African market generally, in terms of the population, I think the next growth of the world population is going to be seen in Africa. Now, if you zoom down now to South Africa, where I come from, we are responsible for about 60 million South Africans in terms of our population. We've got a very dynamic, poultry sector where you've got two existing systems. You call it your smallholder, backyard producers and your large commercial producers. Now, because of the history of the country where we come from and the sector that we have, over the years, we've been working with government to develop what we call the agriculture and agro-processing master plan. Now, what this plan aims to do is to basically bring, let's call it the previously disadvantaged individuals because of the history of the country back into the value chain. Now, we're trying to sort of open opportunities for those farmers, your smallholder farmers in the villages to sort of be integrated in the, let's call it the commercial agricultural sector of the country. What we've done with government is that in the past, government, as we understand, will put the sort of the grants, try to assist those producers, to sort of reach a particular level. As an industry, we realize that there's been a lot of investment gone through those, call it projects. But in terms of getting the outcome, a tangible outcome, it is not yet there. And then there are many challenges, of course, issues of access to the markets, issues of how you sort of package your product and how you produce it. So with this sort of call it the master plan that we've developed with government, it's more now to drive the growth of the industry, generally the whole agricultural sector. Now, in that plan, now specifically, if we zoom to my industry, the poultry industry, we speak of, in opportunities of, at times, we've got too many eggs in the country within South Africa. There are opportunities for us to sort of export those eggs, especially to our neighboring countries like your Mozambique, Botswana, Swaziland, and Lesotho. So time and again, we do have those surplus stocks of eggs where we want to export them. In the past, we used to be very big or strong in terms of producing what we call the powdered eggs. Over the years, that has gone down. We import a lot of that powder. Unfortunately, we are also a country that is also being hard hit by the highly pathogen avian influenza over the years, where we've seen, in the last season, where we lost about 30% of our local industry, which was destroyed by this, notorious disease. What we then did, because of those opportunities, we were down in terms of our flock size. We opened the market for the imports. We've done a lot of imports for the liquid and powder eggs, specifically for our call it industrial purposes, and then all the remaining eggs were consumed in South Africa. Without touching much on the mid side of the industry, it's known we import quite a lot of chicken, especially from your European countries and America. So that's how the situation looks like in our country.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Obongi. The South African poultry industry, despite of various challenges as discussed by you, presents a wide range of opportunities for local and the international investors, like driven by the growing domestic demand, expanding export market, and there are several value-added processing